Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to this Sybiz Mobile Apps Showcase. And we're just going to take you through an overview of our applications today. As per usual, my name is Ben O'Brien, and we're just going to get straight into it. And we're covering quite a number of apps that are either available or on their way, and we'll explain that as we go. And just as usual as well, if you do have any questions and you are watching live, please put your email address in with your question, just in case we don't get a chance to answer it during the session. And if you are watching the recording, by all means, you can send questions through our website. And just on that, we have had a bunch of questions that were submitted as part of the registration process. We will address some of those more general questions as we go through the webinar. Some of the more specific ones we will get back to you later. So if you don't hear the answer to the question that you submitted in registration, we'll get back to you later and give you that answer to that specific question. So as far as the apps are concerned, there's 6 apps with 5 of those actually released at the moment, and it's the service app that is still on its way, but that will be released at some stage in the near future. So we have the ESS app for Visipay that's undergone a few refreshes over its lifetime, approaching 10 years old as an app option for Visipay. The sales and purchase apps, which we'll take a look at, as well as the stock and jobs and service apps. So just in terms of a little bit of an introduction, the apps are written to operate on the iOS and Android platforms, and they're generally sort of optimized for the phone configuration of those devices. And you have a number of configuration options, which I'll talk about just at the in just a moment under the infrastructure and licensing as well. And in terms of, we've had a few questions about this, about how they actually work with the backend database, and essentially, unless they're in an offline mode, some of the apps can go into an offline mode and then sync when they're back online. The connection is live to the data. So just a couple little bits and pieces on that as well. There is some data that is sucked down onto the devices for some of the apps that will be stored and utilized in the case of the offline mode, but also for some of the stuff that is done while still online. And then when there's more specific or complex things that are required, such as looking up special prices, etc., that is where there's a connection back to the server to read that information. And of course, once, say, the sales order is processed on the app, just in context, what happens there is once it's processed on the app, it is visible and live in the backend database immediately, so that it is essentially a live connection. Again, unless you're offline, so if your internet connection's dropped on your device or your mobile connection's dropped on your device, or you're in a remote area, etc., then you can still operate on the majority of the apps and then sync when you're back in the connection world. So as far as infrastructure is concerned, we won't talk too much about this because it really is dependent on what your current situation is. But just at a very high level, if you are hosting your own website at the moment, for example, and it's a secure website, then you've probably got the majority of infrastructure that you need. If that's something that you're not doing currently, then there are a number of options that really need to be taken in the context of your organization and your existing hardware and network infrastructure. And there's also cloud options as well. So that, just to put that in context as well, that would be where essentially your entire Sybiz Vision environment would be hosted in the cloud, and the apps would be served from the cloud as well. And again, that would just be live connection to your backend database as well when using the apps in that sense. So yeah, we could spend the entire time talking about the options there, but I don't want to confuse people. It's just something just to be aware of, that there are infrastructure requirements. You may already be covering those off with what you've got, but it is a case-by-case basis. As far as licensing is concerned, from a Sybiz Visipay point of view, the ESS app is powered by the ESS module. So if you don't have that module, you will need that particular module. And certain other functionality within the ESS does require other modules, such as the HRM and leave management modules as well. From a vision perspective, the apps, or I guess from across the board, the apps are actually free to download, but the web API which powers the apps is a separate module as well. And that module, just as a sidebar, that is included in the Sybiz business pack. So if you do have a business pack license, you already have that module sitting there ready to go. And so assuming your infrastructure is up to standard as well, then you could get up and running reasonably quickly if you're on those business packs. So again, it is something that you need to talk to your business partners in the context of your own organisation and your current licensing that you have. And in terms of moving forward, the good news is we've finally got together with our business partners face to face this time last week, in fact, and first time in 4 years we've been able to do that. And so it was a really good opportunity for there to be hands-on sessions with the apps, with your business partners. So that's why we've put this webinar here while it's all fresh with your business partners. It's a good time to engage with them and move forward if you're interested in some of these apps that we have on offer. So this is just a little checklist about some of the common features across the apps. So ESS, for example, doesn't have the offline ability, whereas the other apps do. They've all got help, sort of cut down versions of the help file to help you out there as well. You can do change a password for the users there. The user rights as well are inherited from the desktop application. So that's what drives the security. So if someone doesn't have the ability to, say, do sales orders in the desktop application, they're not going to be able to do sales orders on the mobile app using the same login credentials as they would for the desktop app. So yeah, I guess the point of that is that whatever user rights you have configured and roles you have configured within the desktop app, that's exactly the same as what will happen on the mobile apps. And there's some map integration where it's necessary or makes sense within a bunch of the apps as well. And similarly with the phone, you have the ability just rather than sort of having to shell out of the application and dial the phone number separately, you can just use the links within the applications themselves, and your phone will sort of take care of the rest. And I guess that's a key point where there is a lot of leveraging of the inbuilt devices functionality, and we'll talk about that as we go as well with a couple examples. So as far as the ESS app is concerned, we won't spend a lot of time on this because it has been around for quite some time. But yeah, so just an awareness for those that perhaps don't know about it. So it has just undergone its third major update, and we've added some new functionality, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And there is also the web interface. So from a technical point of view, we used to have a separate backend for the mobile app, which we previously called Sybiz Leave, because that was the majority of the functionality that it had. But it is now called ESS, and essentially once you get configured for the ESS app, it's a very easy step to configure for the website as well. So you have the ability to do either or because it is quite easy now to do both. It's yeah, the recommended option is to have both of those interfaces available. So the app overview, basically it was rewritten. The ESS rewrite was launched in August 2022. The lead requests and approvals have been there since day dot, as have the accrual balances, and you have the ability to access pay slips. And what is new in this version of the application is the timesheet entry and approvals, and also the ability to update details. So that's a couple new features that have been added into the new version of the ESS app. And it doesn't, yeah, I guess just a point there that the app doesn't do absolutely everything that the website interface does for ESS, but it does the majority of what you can do on the web interface as well. So that's the ESS app from an overview point of view. From the sales app, essentially, this is just like a little helicopter view of the typical scenarios that this app supports. So essentially, it's designed for the rep on the road who's going out and visiting customers, and then depending on, I guess, your workflow as an organisation, whether they're the rep is going to be filling quotes as a result of their visits, or sales orders, that's entirely up to you. They can do both. And again, that's driven by their user rights. So if they can't do sales orders in the desktop application, then they're not going to be able to do it in the mobile app. So, and essentially what happens is once those quotes and orders are taken on the road, they're immediately, once they're processed, they're immediately put up into the back office database, and then the rest of the team can get the orders ready to ship out the door as either deliveries or invoices, depending on what your process is there. And of course, you can have sales picks and things like that in the mix in that back office process as well. So that's just giving you, I guess, the overview of where the sales app fits. And as far as the overview is concerned, it was launched in 2021. And as I said, you've got the ability to enter the sales quotes. You can also approve sales quotes through the app as well. And sales orders is the other option there. It's a very sort of easy to use user interface, and getting the balance right in terms of the real estate of what's available on the screen. And you have the ability also to separate those sales and the save and process rights. And there are print and email functions within the apps as well if they're required. So as you sort of set up your transactions, you have the ability to drill down into your customer details, and within that you can phone, email, SMS, or get a map of the customer's address, all from the customer's details area. From a transaction details point of view, there are smart defaults based on your settings and relevance. So for example, if you only have one location for your stock within your organization, then there's no need then to interact with that particular field. It will just default based on that scenario. From a line items point of view, it is just easy to hit the add button and ping through the lines. At this point in time, it is only the inventory lines, and so you have the ability to search and look those up, and so essentially what you're doing is you're adding the items on a separate page just to maximize the amount of information. And our user interfaces are very much based around holding your phone in your hand and using your thumb as the main sort of point. So everything in terms of what you're interacting with is generally within thumb's reach. And just some of the settings, just to give you an idea of the way the application works, is you can set your price entry mode to inclusive or exclusive. The location source, this might be a little bit tricky to understand, but I'll just let you know that you can sort of either have the device dictate that. So you can set that as we have on that screen capture there. We've set the location default value because we're defining that from the device point of view. But you can also say the location will be dynamic based on the location that is defaulted on the customer's account. And similar with the sales rep, you can define that either by device. In this case, we've defined it by customer. So whatever's on the customer record is the default sales rep that will be used, similar with the analysis code. So hopefully that makes sense. And we'll reinforce that with some of the other apps as well. From the purchase app point of view, basically whoever's involved in purchasing there does have the ability just to enter purchase orders or requisitions. As far as the requisitions are concerned, the rejection or hopefully approval of those before they become purchase orders, that is something that is done on the desktop application. So that functionality is separate, as opposed to the sales quotes, where the sales quotes can be approved on the device themselves. And from the purchase app background, we have, we launched it in 2022. And as I said, you have the ability to enter purchase requisitions, enter purchase orders. You've got that save and process, which can be separated from a rights perspective. So you could have some people that can just save purchase orders, for example, but then someone else wants to vet them back at head office before they're sent on to the supplier. And you also have the print and email functionality. So it is very similar in terms of adding lines, etc., to the sales app. So where possible within this demonstration today, we won't show you stuff that we've already talked about in the context of a different app. Again, you've got your defaults. It's a lot simpler than the sales in terms of the options here. So you have your price entry mode and then your location default source. And those options can be set reasonably consistently there. From the stock app point of view, at this point, it has the ability to do your sales picks. So essentially, also your Stocktake. So what the workflow is there is in the back office, the sales picks are generated and allocated. They don't necessarily need to be allocated to a person, but we recommend that you do that. Similarly with the Stocktake, it will be better if you allocate them to a specific person to pick up and do the Stocktake, and we'll explain more about that in a moment, but that just gives you the overview of where the stock app sits. Again, that was launched in 2022 and has the Stocktake and sales picks ability. Save and process, as we've seen with the other apps, you've got the ability to scan and search, as well as navigate through to the specific items, and we'll explain that in just a moment as well. And the allocation to a specific user, again, we recommend this because 9 times out of 10, you're going to know who you want to do the actual job. But if there are sales picks or Stocktakes that are unallocated, they can be picked up by other people. But as you would have seen at the start, the stock app is one of those that can be offline, and so what you don't want to have happen is 2 people independently pick up the same Stocktake, for example, and so that's just something you're going to have some internal processes. If you're not going to be allocating the Stocktakes to specific people, you're going to want to make sure that there is some communication within the team to make sure that 2 people aren't picking up the same Stocktake at the same time. And we are looking at bringing stock transfers into this app in the short term as well. And as far as the Stocktake, the performing of the Stocktake is concerned, again, we recommend that you do allocate the Stocktake to the user that you want to perform that Stocktake. But they do have the ability to pick up the unallocated Stocktakes as well. And it is could be simply just navigating through the list. If the Stocktake has been sort of prepared in a way that is logical as people move through the warehouse account, then they should be able to just go through to the next items and continue their count. So there is that option just to navigate through those lists, or you can find the items or use barcode scans as well. And again, you've got the save and process ability. From a sales pick point of view, and I'll just make this point again, that it is best to allocate to a specific user. And the user has the ability to pick and or pack, and so they just once they grab the items that they require for this pick, they then just use the slider there to indicate at whether they've picked or packed. And obviously, if it's packed, it implies that it's been picked as well. And so, yeah, you have the ability to find the items and also barcode scan the items as well. And you just have the process option there. So again, once the process button is hit, that immediately updates the back-end database, and then the delivery process can occur, etc. from there. And just some of the settings here as well, just to sort of complete the picture. You get to dictate the Stocktake line sort order. So if it makes sense to do it in bin number order, then that's a good option to use there. And then you also have default filters that you can nominate. So in this case, we've got not counted. And similarly with the sales pick line sort order, you have the ability to dictate that as well as the filtering as well. And if you do have your pictures, you do in your database, you do have the ability to bring them down as well, bearing in mind that generally if you've got thousands of items and therefore thousands of pictures, it's going to take up quite a bit of storage space and also quite a bit of bandwidth. So you just need to choose that wisely within the context of your organization. But certainly if there are items that you do need a visual to identify them, when you're picking or doing the Stocktake, then that's probably a good reason to have those pictures come through as well. And onto the Jobs app, there there's a lot of similarities between the Jobs app and the Service app, so we'll sort of cover the functionality in a bit of a crossover sense there. But again, just to give you the lay of the land where the Jobs app fits, essentially the back office will create and schedule the jobs, and they can then be picked up by the person with the app who has the ability to do job cost transactions against those jobs, and also perform timesheet entry and purchase orders associated with those jobs. And if there's some follow-up required, they do have the ability to do their schedule their own appointments or schedule appointments for other people as well using the app. And once they've done all the work that needs doing for those jobs, then it's back to the head office to then get either the costed invoices or sales invoices out the door. So that's just, I guess, giving you that crossover in the functionality between what happens at the back office compared to on the app. So again, this one was launched last year, and as I said, you've got your job cost entry, which can also include time line, so you don't have to use a timesheet entry, so it's just up to your personal preference within your organization. And the appointment scheduler as well, as I said, you can pick up the appointments that have already been scheduled by the back office and also schedule your own appointments going forward as well. And you can put in purchase orders for items associated with that job as well. And again, you've got the save and process functionality that's dictated by user rights, and print and email functionality is built in there as well. So you've got the maps. Again, the other apps have the map functionality as well, but you have the ability to then drill down into the map and use the inbuilt apps within your iOS or Android device to get directions, etc., for the actual address. And yeah, you do have, again, other features of the operating system that's available to the apps. So for example, here's just an example of a reference being entered by voice, and that's just using an iPhone to do that. So you do have those kind of interactions within the device itself. From a timesheet entry point of view, you have the option of entering time via the timesheet or also via costs. And again, that's just up to your preference there. And from a purchase order perspective, it gives you the ability to order direct to that job. So you let it know what job it is that you're doing, and then you can identify the stock items that you want to order for that job, and that then creates that paper trail there for the items that have been ordered for those jobs, and just follows the same process as on the desktop application. And from a job cost entry point of view, you've got 3 different line types that you can enter. So you've got your inventory lines, your general ledger lines, and your labor lines if you're choosing to do that there rather than timesheets. And again, just to give you a bit more of the context in terms of the settings of the app. So you have the ability to nominate which person is using this device. So you could have that left blank, and then you're going to, I guess, have the ability to have more than one person using the device, but in reality, that's fairly rarely the case. So generally, you'd want to set up who is actually using this device in the context of what staff member they are from the Vision front end job costing module, and you've got your cost and charge entry options there as well as your purchase order settings, so price entry mode, etc. Your timesheet settings, so there's some abilities to default to the copying of data for subsequent lines, and it's not shown in the screen capture there, but there's the scheduler settings as well, just to set up the application and personalize it to how you want to get things moving within the app. And the final app that we will look at today is the Service app. So again, as I said, it's very similar to the Jobs app. It's generally speaking, the back office is the one that sort of creates the service requests and then schedules those. They then come through to the device, and the person doing the hard work, they can enter the service actions, timesheets, and also schedule follow-up appointments, etc., for themselves or other people within the organisation. And then once they're done with their service actions and timesheets, etc., then the back office takes over and handles the invoicing. So we'll be launching this year. We're a little bit up in the air as to precisely when that will be. We're just dealing with some launch customers at the moment, just making sure that we're covering the functionality that they're required. So once that feedback is complete, that will then allow us to get more precise as to when exactly we'll be launching the app. But we just want to make sure that we have that core functionality covered, so that's a good experience with those launch customers. And as I've mentioned in the previous slide, we've got the service action entry, timesheet entry. Workflow steps is something that we'll cover in just a moment as well. And that's a fairly new concept that's been driven by the app. So it's not been in the desktop application previously. And in fact, the workflow steps is something that even though the maintenance is done in the desktop app, the actual conducting of the workflow steps is done only in the app itself. And again, the appointments scheduler is very similar to what we saw from a job costing perspective as well. Save and process, print and email. We've seen that movie before. So with the appointments, you have the ability to interact with the appointments that have been scheduled and allocated by the back office. You can schedule your own appointments and appointments for others. Again, very similar to what we saw with the job costing as well. From a service actions point of view, you have the ability to enter product lines, general ledger lines, labor lines, and I'm just showing the search function just because we had a bit more of a look at the lines in the job costing, so just showing some of the other functionality that is available there as well. And so the labor lines can be entered via timesheets, and so you do have that option, again very similar to the job app. And I should just point out as well that you might say, okay, well, why not just have one app that does all of this? And generally we're following best practices where a single app should be designed for a specific set of purposes rather than trying to be everything to everyone all of the time, because then it gets clunky and not user friendly. And so that's why there are separate apps, and they're easy to navigate from one to the other if you're in that situation where you are using multiple applications or multiple apps. And as far as the service actions are concerned, again, you can process or save depending on what it is you're wanting to do, and then the back office can take over from there and get the invoicing out the door. And of course, if you just save the service actions, they can be processed by someone else if that's your workflow within your organization. As far as the settings are concerned, you do have the default travel line item associated with workflow settings. That's an option. If you don't supply the default, then you just need to nominate that each time. You've got your staff default. So again, like the job costing app, it is recommended that the person using the device gets put in there as the default. Just makes it flow a lot better. But of course, you also have the option of leaving that blank and sharing that device with other people. You've got your cost and charge entry method, etc., timesheet settings that are same as what we saw with job costing, and then the scheduler settings there that we didn't see on the job costing screen capture. And so from a workflows perspective, this is just the final little bit just to round that out, just to provide a little bit more information. So essentially, the workflows are configured within the desktop application itself. And once they're up and running, they can then get allocated to a service request, and then the workflow can be stepped through on the device. So the idea would be, this is just an example of needing to call the customer to confirm the appointment and get the gate code if necessary, and then going through logging the travel time, and then the time conducted on site, as well as checking a few more bits and pieces off. And it can even go through and capture signatures and things like that. So again, that's not going to mean a lot to a number of people, so we won't go into any more detail as far as those workflow steps are concerned, but it's just good to know that they exist. So We are just rounding the final corner now. So if there are any questions that you haven't had a chance to type in, again, please just use your email address as part of that question so we can get back to you. And also, if you are tuning into the recording, you can use our web contact form or send us an email at sybiz@sybiz.com, and we'll get back to you. So just to recap, if any of these apps are catching your eye, have a conversation with your Sybiz business partners who've had some good hands-on experience at our conference last week in Adelaide. And other than that, we'll leave you to it. And if you are watching live, have a great weekend. If you're watching the recording, all the best. Cheers. Bye.